The station of Aurora Prime never slept. Its neon lights reflected off the metal walls, bouncing in endless patterns, painting the corridors in blues, purples, and flashes of orange. The air was thick with the smell of ionized engines, fried synth food, and the faint tang of alien perfumes. Merchants shouted their wares in dozens of languages, while humans and aliens alike jostled through the crowd, each focused on their own business. In the midst of all this chaos, a small figure moved silently, almost as if she was invisible. Her name was Lyra, a young Zyran girl. Her skin shimmered faintly like glass, reflecting the lights around her. She was fragile, tiny, with delicate limbs that could easily be crushed if she weren't careful. Her hair flowed in a soft, translucent wave, and her eyes, large, luminous, and liquid-like, reflected the world in colors no human had names for. But it wasn't beauty that defined her in that moment. It was fear. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, and exhaustion made each step a struggle. Lyra had been orphaned for months. The war at the edge of Zyran space had claimed her parents, leaving her adrift in a galaxy that felt vast and indifferent. She remembered the sky over her home world, the way the twin suns had kissed the horizon with gold, and how her parents' laughter had sounded like music. Those memories had become both a comfort and a pain, tugging at her heart while reminding her that she was utterly alone. She had wandered from station to station, sleeping wherever she could find shelter. Most of the time, she avoided humans. They were loud, unpredictable, and often cruel. Some looked at her with curiosity, others with greed. Zyrans were rare in most sectors, and rare things were either exploited or pitied. She had learned quickly that to survive, she had to keep moving. But that day, her legs gave out before she could find a hiding spot. The crowd pressed around her, and she stumbled into a dark corner near one of the main docking bays. Her vision blurred, and she sank to the floor. She was trembling, not just from exhaustion, but from the sheer weight of being utterly alone in a world that didn't care. It was then that Ethan Cade noticed her. Ethan wasn't a hero in the traditional sense. He had no medals, no ships named after him, and certainly no stories in galactic history books. To most people in the station, he was just another human traveler, a man who had survived far too many near-death experiences to count, who had scars across his arms and a tiredness in his eyes that spoke of endless journeys. Yet to Lyra, he radiated something she hadn't felt in months: safety. Ethan had been walking toward the docking bay, scanning the crowd with careful eyes. He had dealt with smugglers, mercenaries, and alien pirates, so his instincts were sharp. When he spotted the small figure slumped against the wall, he paused. At first, he thought it might be another intoxicated traveler or someone injured in the crowd. But something about her, her stillness, the way her hands clutched at her stomach, and the strange glow of her eyes made him stop in his tracks. "Hey," he said gently, kneeling beside her. "Are you okay?" Lyra's eyelids fluttered. She didn't respond immediately. She wasn't used to people speaking to her kindly. Most would have demanded payment, or worse, taken advantage of her small size and vulnerability. But there was a calm in Ethan's voice, a steadiness that didn't waver even in the chaos of the station. It drew her in, like a soft beacon in the storm. Before she could answer, her legs gave out completely. Ethan reached instinctively, gathering her into his arms. Lyra's body was lighter than he expected, almost ethereal, yet there was a strange warmth that seemed to radiate from her small frame. She rested her head on his lap, curling up instinctively, and within moments she had fallen asleep. Ethan looked around, expecting someone to question him. But the crowd was too busy with their own affairs to notice the small, sleeping alien in a human's arms. Merchants shouted about shipments and rare tech. Starships roared overhead. Travelers argued over fares. For a few minutes, the world outside faded, leaving only the quiet rhythm of Lyra's breathing. He didn't know what made him do it, but he stayed. He didn't move her, didn't hand her off to station security. He simply sat, holding her gently, feeling the fragile rise and fall of her chest. There was a story in those moments, he realized. A story of loss, of survival, and perhaps even hope. And then it began. A soft glow started to emanate from Lyra's skin, faint at first, barely perceptible over the station's neon lights. Ethan noticed it instinctively, his trained eyes catching the shimmer that seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. He had heard rumors of Zyran abilities. Humans had speculated for years about what their species could do. But this was something more personal, something alive. Her eyes, even in sleep, flickered with light. Ethan felt a warmth spread across his hands and arms, as if her presence alone could heal exhaustion, mend weariness, and perhaps even touch the deepest corners of the soul. He had never experienced anything like it. It wasn't magic. It wasn't technology. It was something raw, something that belonged to the Xyrans themselves. Other people might have panicked. Station guards could have seen the glow and assumed a biohazard. Merchants might have screamed, calling for quarantine, but Ethan remained calm. He knew that in this fragile child there was a spark, something that the galaxy hadn't yet seen in humans, the potential for a bond that could defy logic, species, and circumstance. Lyra stirred, her small hand brushing against Ethan's wrist. A wave of understanding passed between them, unspoken but unmistakable. She trusted him, and in that trust, Ethan felt something stir within himself, a sense of responsibility, of honor, of a human desire to protect and nurture that no starship, no battle, and no law could define. Minutes passed, though to Ethan it felt like hours. The station's noise faded further, replaced by the quiet hum of Lyra's glow and the soft beating of her heart. Then, without warning, the glow intensified, filling the space around them with a soft, golden light that caused passers-by to step back in awe. No one spoke. No one dared touch the child. It was as if the universe itself had slowed, holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen. Ethan looked down at her, fascinated. He had traveled to the edges of human-known space, survived battles against alien warlords, navigated uncharted wormholes, and yet nothing had prepared him for this. The galaxy was full of wonders, but this fragile child on his lap, was something different. Something alive in a way that demanded reverence. Then, the first sign of danger appeared. A group of scavengers, notorious in Aurora Prime for exploiting stranded travelers and rare species, had spotted Lyra's glow. Their eyes widened with greed and their hands itched for weapons. They saw opportunity in her beauty and her rarity and the unknown powers she held. But before they could move, Ethan's voice rang out, calm but firm. "Back off," he said. His hands didn't tremble. His posture was relaxed, but there was an undeniable authority in him, a human authority, forged in years of surviving against odds that would have broken most. "She's under my protection." The scavengers hesitated, muttering threats, but something about Ethan's presence, a human presence, resolute and fearless, made them pause. No human had ever dared speak to them like that, let alone hold a glowing alien child as if it were the most natural thing in the world. They backed away, muttering under their breath until they disappeared into the crowd. Ethan exhaled slowly. He looked down at Lyra again. She was still asleep, oblivious to the danger that had just passed. But he could feel it, the bond that had begun in these few moments. A bond that would tie human courage and alien potential together in ways the galaxy hadn't imagined. As he gently brushed a strand of glowing hair from her face, he whispered almost to himself, "We're going to make it, together." And for the first time in months, Lyra's dreams were not filled with fear. They were filled with warmth, with safety, with the unspoken promise of a human protector who, against all odds, had become her anchor in the chaos of the stars. For Ethan, this was just the beginning. He had no idea what powers Lyra truly possessed, or how the galaxy might react when it discovered her existence. But one thing was clear: humans had always underestimated themselves. And now, as he sat there in the middle of Aurora Prime Station, holding a fragile alien girl on his lap, he felt that old truth more strongly than ever. Humans were capable of incredible things, and this small, orphaned child might just help remind the galaxy of that fact. The station around them continued to move in chaos, unaware of the quiet miracle happening in the corner. Traders shouted, ships docked and departed, alarms rang, and aliens bargained for goods. But in that small moment, in that small space, the universe had paused. And in that pause, something extraordinary had begun. A human and a Xyran, bound not by law or species, but by trust, courage, and the faint, glowing promise of hope. Ethan settled into his seat, keeping Lyra cradled on his lap. He felt a strength within himself that he hadn't noticed before, a strength born of humanity, of compassion, and of the refusal to let fear dictate actions. This strength, he knew, would be tested in the days to come, and he welcomed it. Because the galaxy was vast, the dangers were real, and the orphaned alien girl asleep on his lap was not just a child. She was a spark, and sparks, he had learned long ago, could ignite revolutions. Ethan had never seen a sight like Aurora Prime Station in the dead of night. Neon lights shimmered off the metal walls, reflecting in puddles of coolant that had dripped from docked ships. The chaos of trade continued unabated, but he hardly noticed. His focus was entirely on Lyra, the small Zyran girl sleeping peacefully on his lap. Even in slumber, she radiated a soft golden glow that pulsed gently with her heartbeat, faint but persistent, like a beacon of hope in a crowded, indifferent galaxy. The danger had not vanished. He could feel it, a tension in the air that humans often sensed in crowded alien hubs. Opportunists, thieves, and bounty hunters thrived where rules were weak, and a glowing orphan would attract attention fast. But Ethan had faced worse odds. He had navigated asteroid fields, survived pirate ambushes, and negotiated with warlords who considered life cheap. Protecting Lyra, he realized, would be another test, but this one demanded more than weapons. It demanded patience, vigilance, and the unshakable courage humans were capable of when the stakes were higher than survival. He shifted slightly, careful not to wake her. Lyra's small hand twitched in her sleep, reaching instinctively for him, her delicate fingers brushing against his wrist. The warmth from her touch surprised him, not in the physical sense, but in the emotional one. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it spoke volumes. Humans had always underestimated their own power, their ability to inspire, to comfort, and to protect. And in this small, fragile being's trust, Ethan felt the weight and the strength of that underestimated force. Suddenly, the glow intensified. It was not fear this time, it was curiosity. Lyra's dreams had shifted from nightmares of loss and loneliness to something else. She was recalling fragments of memory she barely understood, memories of her family, of the cosmos, of hidden abilities that Zyrans rarely revealed even to themselves. The light around her expanded slightly, pulsing in rhythm with her emotions. Nearby, a group of traders noticed it. One of them, a tall humanoid with grayish skin and multiple eyes, pointed and whispered urgently. "Do you see that glow? That child, she is not ordinary. Someone call the authorities." Ethan's gaze hardened. He had learned long ago that the galaxy's authorities were not always friendly, and that officials often saw alien children as commodities, experiments, or political pawns. He tightened his hold on Lyra instinctively, moving subtly toward the nearest exit corridor, weaving through the crowd with ease. Humans could blend, adapt, and improvise in ways many aliens didn't expect. That adaptability was one of the traits that made them uniquely formidable. "Stay with me," he murmured softly to Lyra. Even though she was asleep, his voice seemed to ground her. She responded, almost imperceptibly curling closer into his lap, her small body seeking warmth and protection. Ethan smiled faintly. He had never been a father, never imagined himself in such a role, but here, in the middle of a crowded alien station, he felt a protective instinct that was stronger than fear, stronger than strategy, stronger than almost anything he had known. As they moved, Lyra stirred further. The glow around her intensified, her body reacting almost automatically to Ethan's movement, to the tension in the environment. Then it happened. A surge of energy erupted, not destructive but powerful. It was as if the ambient energy of the station itself responded to her presence. Machinery hummed, lights flickered, and for a brief moment the crowd froze, sensing something extraordinary. One of the traders gasped. "It's the Zyran power," he whispered to his companion. "They say their kind can manipulate energy, but I never thought I'd see it." Ethan did not panic. He had read speculation about Zyrans before, about their latent abilities, but seeing it firsthand was different. Lyra's power was raw, untrained, and unpredictable. But it was also clear that it was tied not to aggression, but to emotion, to trust, to connection. Humans thrived in relationships, in bonds of loyalty and courage, and perhaps that was why the energy responded to Ethan's presence. It was recognition. They reached a quieter part of the station, away from the main crowd. Here, the metallic walls were less polished, and the hum of engines was steady rather than chaotic. Ethan set Lyra gently on a bench, sitting close so she could feel his presence. He observed her, noting the subtle rise and fall of her chest, the way the golden glow lingered around her like a protective aura. "This is just the beginning," he whispered. "We need to understand what you can do, and more importantly, how to keep you safe." Lyra's eyes fluttered open slightly. For the first time, Ethan saw the full depth of her consciousness. Her pupils expanded, colors shifting in ways almost impossible for human eyes to interpret. She looked at him, and though she did not speak, he understood. She trusted him. And in that trust, he felt something extraordinary, the unshakable, unquantifiable power of humanity, not in weapons or ships, but in courage, empathy, and unwavering protection. Minutes passed. Slowly, Lyra began to communicate, not with words, but with images and sensations projected through her Zyran energy. Ethan saw flashes of her homeworld, flashes of the war that had orphaned her, flashes of star systems she longed to visit. It was overwhelming at first, but he adapted quickly. Humans had always thrived in chaos, turning complexity into strategy, confusion into opportunity. "We can do this," he said softly, even as her energy pulses shifted around them, almost like a heartbeat syncing with his own. "Together we can survive. We can make them see humans are stronger than they think." Ethan was right. The station, for all its danger, could not suppress human ingenuity. He noticed a group of mercenaries beginning to tail them, drawn by rumors of the glowing child. Their intentions were clear: capture, profit, leverage. But Ethan had already anticipated this. He moved through narrow corridors, using human instincts for improvisation, hiding in plain sight and creating distractions that were simple yet effective. Humans were unpredictable, and unpredictability was a weapon in itself. At one point, they encountered a patrol of station security drones, hovering silently with scanning sensors. Lyra stirred again, and Ethan's hand brushed hers instinctively. The glow surged. The drones faltered, their sensors confused by the Zyran energy. It was subtle, but it worked. The drones ignored them, moving on to other areas. "This is incredible," Ethan muttered. "You're more than I thought, and maybe more than anyone thought." Lyra's gaze met his again. She seemed to understand. Her energy pulsed in recognition of his human spirit, the courage to face danger, the willingness to protect without expecting reward, the stubborn determination to survive and protect others. Humans had always been underestimated, dismissed as fragile and limited. Yet here, in the middle of a hostile alien hub, Ethan exemplified exactly why that underestimation was a mistake. Hours passed. The glow began to dim slightly as Lyra grew tired again. Ethan guided her to a safer corner, near a docking bay where few travelers passed at this hour. He kept his presence close, a human shield around her fragile frame. There was no need for weapons. Humans had always had another kind of strength, one forged from trust, empathy, and courage. And in that strength, Lyra had already begun to sense safety for the first time in her life. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the far side of the station. A shipment of supplies had fallen, causing minor chaos among workers and traders, but Ethan didn't flinch. He had seen worse. Humans had a resilience built from countless trials across countless worlds. This was just another moment to adapt, to observe, to protect. He kept a hand on Lyra's small shoulder, and the subtle warmth of his presence seemed to calm her, her glow stabilizing. "You're safe here for now," he whispered. "But soon we'll need to move further. The galaxy won't leave you alone forever." And he was right. He had already noticed patterns, traces of interest from powerful organizations and mercenaries. Lyra's abilities, her very existence, could change the balance of power in the galaxy if discovered. But humans, he reminded himself, were capable of extraordinary things. Their ingenuity, courage, and adaptability had carried them across stars, through wars, and into places no one expected them to survive. Protecting Lyra was no different. It required vigilance, creativity, and heart, the very traits that defined humans when the stakes were highest. Ethan began formulating a plan. First, they needed information. Second, a safe place. Third, allies. And in every step, he would rely on humans' most underestimated power. Their willingness to act when others froze, their courage in the face of overwhelming odds, their capacity to inspire trust and loyalty. Hours stretched into early morning. The crowd thinned, the hum of engines softened, and for a brief window, Ethan allowed himself to observe the small, fragile being on his lap. Lyra's breathing was steady, her glow faint but persistent, and he realized something profound. She was not just an orphaned alien girl. She was a spark, a force that could ignite courage and ingenuity in humans who dared to protect her. And humans, he knew, could rise to meet that spark in ways the galaxy had not yet seen. As the first ships of morning departed from the docking bay, Ethan whispered again, almost to himself, "We're just getting started, Lyra. The galaxy is bigger than you know, and it's time we showed them what humans are truly capable of." And for the first time since she had been orphaned, Lyra felt something she had not known in months: hope. Not just the fragile hope of survival, but the kind of hope born from trust, from courage, from the human capacity to fight, protect, and endure even in the face of impossible odds. The bond between human and alien, fragile as it seemed, had begun to shape the future, not just for the two of them, but for a galaxy that was about to learn, in no uncertain terms, that humans were far stronger and more remarkable than anyone had imagined. By the time Aurora Prime's twin suns rose, the station had shifted into a rhythm of its own. The neon glare dimmed in some areas, replaced by the cold reflection of early light off steel walls. Traders began shouting again, cargo shuttles docked with clanging noises, and the hum of engines filled every corridor. But for Ethan and Lyra, morning brought little comfort. The shadows of the previous night lingered, and Ethan knew they could not remain in one place for long. Lyra stirred, blinking slowly, her luminous eyes reflecting the soft morning light. The glow that had pulsed through her body the night before was faint now, but still present. Ethan brushed a soft hand over her hair, careful not to startle her. "We need to move soon," he whispered, his voice low but firm. "People are already watching. You can't stay hidden for long." Lyra nodded slightly, her head resting on his shoulder. She had begun to trust him completely, a bond formed in the quiet moments of fear, exhaustion, and mutual understanding. But trust alone could not protect her from the dangers that were growing stronger with each passing hour. Mercenaries, bounty hunters, and ambitious traders had learned about her glow. Rumors spread faster than ships, and soon, powerful organizations would start to pay attention. They left the bench and moved through narrow corridors, weaving between the early morning traffic of workers and traders. Ethan had noticed patterns already: the way security drones scanned, the way certain merchants kept a careful eye on travelers. He had survived countless missions that demanded foresight and quick thinking, and now those same skills were being used to shield the small alien girl beside him. As they moved, Lyra's glow began to flicker, reacting to the tension in the environment. Ethan observed it closely. It was not dangerous, not in the traditional sense, but it was noticeable. Any species with keen perception could detect it, and in a city like Aurora Prime, that meant attention, unwanted attention. They reached a quiet observation platform overlooking the docking bays. From here, the chaos of the station was visible in full: ships landing and taking off, merchants shouting orders, and travelers moving in a constant tide. Ethan set Lyra down carefully, standing close to her. "You see that?" he asked, pointing to a cluster of ships in the distance. "That's a private security fleet, and from what I can tell, they're looking for someone, probably you." Lyra's eyes widened, the colors shifting rapidly. She did not need words to understand. The energy she had controlled unconsciously before now responded to fear and anticipation, to the presence of threats. Her body shimmered faintly, as if preparing itself for a reaction she could not yet control. Ethan knelt beside her, placing his hands gently on her shoulders. "We're going to do this together," he said. "You trust me, right?" She nodded again, and in that moment Ethan felt a surge of determination. Humans had always been underestimated in the galaxy, not because they were weak, but because they were adaptable, resilient, and courageous in ways that others often could not predict. Protecting Lyra was no longer just about survival. It was about showing the galaxy what humans were capable of. Suddenly, a loud alarm echoed through the station. Red lights flashed across the observation platform. Security drones swarmed nearby, scanning corridors and docking bays. Ethan grabbed Lyra's hand, pulling her toward a narrow service tunnel that led deeper into the station. "Stay close," he instructed. "No matter what happens, don't let go." The tunnel was dark and narrow, filled with pipes and conduits that hummed with energy. Ethan's experience told him that this was the perfect place to evade pursuers. Humans had always excelled at improvisation, turning ordinary environments into strategic advantages. He guided Lyra through twists and turns, careful to keep her calm while maintaining their speed. As they moved, Ethan noticed the energy around Lyra intensifying. Her glow was stronger now, reacting to their proximity to danger. It was almost like she was learning, adapting unconsciously, guided by instinct and trust. He realized that her abilities were not just powerful, they were interactive, responding to emotions, intentions, and human presence. They emerged into a maintenance bay filled with crates, tools, and half-disassembled machinery. Ethan set Lyra down again, crouching beside her. "Here's what we're going to do," he explained. "We're going to use this space to your advantage. You're going to focus on controlling your glow. Don't worry about the people outside. I'll handle them." Lyra's eyes reflected a mixture of fear and determination. She had survived alone for months, relying only on instinct. But for the first time, she was learning that she did not have to face the galaxy by herself. Humans, unpredictable as they were, could act as shields, mentors, and partners in ways she had never imagined. The sound of footsteps echoed from the far end of the bay. Mercenaries were approaching, drawn by the rumors of the glowing child. Ethan positioned himself in front of Lyra, standing tall and unyielding. He had no weapons ready, no arsenal of explosives, just his human instincts, his courage, and his willingness to protect. And that was enough. The first mercenary stepped into the bay, eyes wide at the faint golden glow surrounding Lyra. He raised a weapon, but Ethan's voice stopped him immediately. "Step back," Ethan commanded. There was no hesitation in his tone, no fear. "Leave her alone." The mercenary sneered, thinking it was a bluff, but then something extraordinary happened. Lyra, still crouched on the floor, extended a small hand. A pulse of golden energy shot outward, not violently, but powerfully enough to knock the mercenary off balance. The human guard accompanying him was momentarily blinded by the light. Ethan didn't move. He didn't have to. Humans had always been underestimated because their strength was measured by physical power alone. But courage, decisiveness, and the ability to inspire action in others were strengths of a different kind, ones that could turn the tide of impossible situations. And Ethan exemplified that. The mercenaries hesitated, muttering among themselves. Ethan seized the opportunity, stepping forward. His voice was calm, but every word carried authority. "You want her? Then you have to go through me. And I don't think you're ready for what comes next." The mercenaries glanced at each other, uncertainty creeping into their expressions. Lyra's energy pulsed again, responding to Ethan's confidence. It was subtle but unmistakable. Together, Human and Xiren were stronger than any of them had anticipated. One of the mercenaries lunged forward, but Ethan's reflexes were faster. He grabbed the attacker's arm, using the momentum to throw him into a stack of crates. The others froze, realizing that human ingenuity, combined with unpredictable Xiren power, was not something they could easily overcome. Lyra's glow brightened even further, filling the bay with light that seemed almost alive. Ethan knew they had only a brief window. He grabbed her hand and pulled her toward a small maintenance shaft that led to the docking corridors. Humans were masters of improvisation, and Ethan intended to use that skill to its fullest. They moved quickly, shadows and light dancing across the walls. Lyra's energy reacted to every step, illuminating their path while simultaneously masking them from distant sensors. It was a delicate balance, but she had learned quickly. Her trust in Ethan, combined with his calm guidance, allowed them to navigate danger that would have overwhelmed most travelers. By the time they emerged near the docking corridors, the mercenaries had regrouped, shouting and pointing, but Ethan had already calculated the next move. Humans were strategic under pressure. They could improvise weapons from ordinary objects, create diversions, and think 10 steps ahead when others panicked. Ethan spotted a small transport vessel preparing for departure. It was old and barely operational, but it was enough. He guided Lyra toward it, ignoring the shouts from below. The glow around her had stabilized, controlled now by instinct and guidance. Humans had a unique ability to lead, to inspire confidence, and to create opportunities even in the most desperate situations. They boarded the vessel just as the first pursuers reached the docking corridor. Ethan initiated the launch sequence, and the ship shuddered as engines roared to life. The glow from Lyra filled the cabin, a soft but persistent reminder that humans were not just surviving. They were adapting, mastering, and protecting life in ways the galaxy had underestimated. As the station disappeared behind them, Ethan looked at Lyra. She was exhausted, but her eyes held a spark of something new: confidence, control, and understanding. Humans had taught her the power of trust, and in return, her Xiren abilities had demonstrated the potential that lay in unexpected partnerships. "This is only the beginning," Ethan said softly. "The galaxy will try to take advantage of you, but they'll learn humans aren't weak. We fight, we protect, and we endure. Together we'll make them see that." Lyra's glow pulsed in response, a subtle affirmation of trust and partnership. The small vessel carried them away from Aurora Prime, but the bond formed between human and alien was now unbreakable. They were not just survivors. They were a team capable of facing any challenge the galaxy could throw at them. Ethan knew the road ahead would be dangerous. Powerful factions, mercenaries, and organizations would pursue them relentlessly. But humans had always thrived under pressure. Their ingenuity, courage, and adaptability had allowed them to conquer challenges far greater than themselves. Protecting Lyra was not just a mission, it was a testament to the strength of humanity itself. As the stars stretched out before them, Ethan allowed himself a small smile. He had no doubt that together, human and Xiren could face the galaxy's dangers. And he also knew something else. The galaxy had never truly seen what humans could do when driven by courage, loyalty, and the desire to protect those who could not protect themselves. Lyra, sleeping peacefully in the corner of the cabin, would awaken to a universe vastly more dangerous, but also full of possibilities. With humans like Ethan guiding her, she would not only survive, she would thrive. And together, they would challenge the galaxy's assumptions about strength, power, and what it truly meant to be human. The stars outside the small transport vessel stretched into streaks as they jumped into hyperspace. Ethan sat in the pilot's seat, glancing occasionally at the Xiren girl resting on the floor, her small body curled under a blanket he had found in the cabin. Lyra was quiet now, her glow faint but steady, as if she were saving her energy for the trials yet to come. Ethan knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and their enemies were relentless, but he also knew something crucial. Humans had an ability that could not be measured by weapons, ships, or numbers. Humans had courage, ingenuity, and an instinct to protect those who could not protect themselves, and those traits would shape everything to come. As they emerged from hyperspace, the ship shuddered. A warning light blinked. An unregistered vessel was approaching fast. Ethan scanned the sensors. "Looks like we have company," he muttered, eyes narrowing. The vessel was sleek, black, and fast, clearly designed for interception. Whoever was chasing them had resources, and they were willing to use them. Lyra stirred, sensing the tension. Her glow brightened slightly, responding to the fear and urgency in the cabin. Ethan reached over, taking her hand in his. "Stay calm. We've handled worse," he said, though even he felt a rush of adrenaline. Humans thrived under pressure, and this was pressure at its most extreme. The vessel closed in rapidly. Ethan adjusted the controls, weaving the transport through a cluster of asteroids to throw off their pursuer. The small ship shuddered under the maneuver, but it held. "We need to find somewhere safe," Ethan said, thinking quickly. His mind raced through star maps, uncharted systems, and abandoned stations. Humans had always relied on adaptability in moments like this, turning limited resources into opportunities, danger into advantage. Lyra's glow pulsed in response, and Ethan realized that her abilities were beginning to interact with the ship systems. Subtle energy ripples moved through the controls, stabilizing the engines and increasing responsiveness. Her Xiren nature was enhancing human ingenuity in real time, a combination that was more powerful than either alone. "Looks like you're helping, little one," Ethan said with a grin. Lyra's luminous eyes flicked up at him, and for the first time she seemed aware of her own power, not as a threat but as a tool. Humans had a unique ability to trust and empower, and in that trust she found confidence. The pursuing vessel fired first, sleek energy beams cutting through space toward them. Ethan maneuvered sharply, dodging the blasts with skill born from years of survival. But he knew this was only a temporary solution. Humans had survived countless battles not by brute force, but by combining strategy, creativity, and courage. And now he needed to do it again on a galactic scale. "Get ready, Lyra," he said, voice calm but firm. "We're going to fight, but we do it smart. We're not just surviving, we're showing them what humans can do." The ship lurched as another blast hit, but the cabin remained intact. Ethan guided them closer to a dense asteroid field. Human ingenuity had always turned natural hazards into advantages, and the asteroid belt was no exception. They weaved through narrow gaps, the pursuing vessel struggling to keep up. Lyra's energy pulsed, extending faintly beyond the ship, creating a shield-like effect that distorted the incoming blasts. The pursuer hesitated, clearly unprepared for this combination of human skill and alien power. Ethan grinned. Humans had always been underestimated, but when the odds were stacked against them, their courage and creativity shone brightest. He tapped into that instinct now, pushing the ship through a particularly narrow pass that the pursuer could not navigate. Breathing steadily, Ethan glanced at Lyra. "See, humans always find a way," he said softly. She smiled faintly, her glow dimming as relief washed over her. But he knew this was far from over. They emerged from the asteroid field into a hidden nebula. Ethan had chosen this area deliberately. Few sensors penetrated the thick clouds of gas, making it nearly invisible to scanners. Humans had always turned adversity into opportunity, and hiding in plain sight was a perfect example. Lyra's glow adjusted to the dim surroundings, becoming brighter and more controlled. Her abilities were responding to the environment, and Ethan realized that together, their combined skills made them a force unlike any in the galaxy. Humans were resilient, adaptable, and courageous. Xyrans were powerful, intuitive, and capable of manipulating energy in ways few could understand. Together, they could survive almost anything. Suddenly, the ship's sensors picked up movement. Another group of pursuers had tracked them here. This time, Ethan had a plan. He directed the vessel deeper into the nebula, weaving through gas clouds and using Lyra's energy to cloak their presence. Humans had always excelled at improvisation, and this was a perfect example. The enemy, overconfident and unprepared, was left struggling to navigate the dense clouds. Lyra's small hand glowed, her energy interacting with the ship's systems to enhance shields and propulsion. Ethan felt a surge of pride. Humans had always underestimated themselves, believing that strength lay only in physical might or firepower. But courage, ingenuity, and the will to protect could achieve far more than brute force ever could. The pursuers fired blindly into the nebula. Energy beams collided with dense gas, dissipating harmlessly. Ethan laughed quietly. "Humans survive by thinking ahead," he said, "and Xyrans, you just make the impossible even better." Hours passed as they navigated the nebula, finally emerging into uncharted space. Ethan consulted the maps, plotting a course to a secluded, abandoned space station known to few. Humans had always relied on exploration and adaptability, and now those traits were guiding their journey. When they arrived, the station appeared abandoned, silent, and untouched. Ethan docked carefully, securing the vessel. Lyra's glow dimmed as she relaxed, the first real moment of safety in what felt like weeks. She stepped cautiously from the ship, her eyes scanning the station's corridors. "This will do for now," Ethan said, settling into a corner near the docking bay. "We'll rest, plan, and then figure out what comes next. The galaxy won't leave us alone, but humans always rise to the challenge." Lyra nodded, understanding more than words could convey. Her experiences had been harsh, and she had survived alone for months. But with Ethan, she had learned something new: trust, courage, and the strength humans carried quietly but fiercely. As they explored the station, they found remnants of old technology and systems that still worked. Ethan realized that humans had a unique advantage: their ability to use what others discarded, to turn scraps into tools, and to adapt environments for survival. He set to work repairing systems, fortifying entrances, and creating a safe haven for Lyra. Over the next few days, they tested her abilities. Lyra discovered that she could manipulate energy fields more effectively, particularly when guided by trust and calm instruction. Humans had always been innovators, using every tool, every lesson, and every experience to their advantage. And now, that human guidance was allowing her to grow stronger, more confident, and more precise with her powers. Ethan was impressed. Humans had survived countless threats by combining intelligence, courage, and empathy. Xyrans had raw power, but untrained abilities could be unpredictable and dangerous. Together, they complemented each other perfectly. Humans provided strategy, guidance, and protection. Lyra provided energy, intuition, and raw potential. The combination was more formidable than either could achieve alone. Word reached them that their pursuers were regrouping, assembling fleets and mercenaries to capture the glowing Xyran girl. But Ethan did not panic. Humans thrived under pressure, often turning impossible odds into opportunities for victory. He formulated a plan to use Lyra's abilities strategically, combined with human ingenuity and knowledge of galactic systems, to outmaneuver their enemies completely. The first wave arrived near the outskirts of their location. Ethan guided Lyra to a control room with an old but functional defense system. "We'll show them what humans can do," he said. "It's not just strength, they'll see intelligence, courage, and strategy." Lyra focused, extending her energy into the system. The lights flickered, energy pulsed through conduits, and a network of defenses activated. Ethan manipulated controls, using every human skill of improvisation and adaptation he had learned over years of surviving impossible missions. Together, Human and Zyron created a trap the pursuers could not anticipate. The enemy ships approached, expecting an easy capture. Instead, they were met with coordinated energy fields, defensive barriers, and strategic maneuvers that forced them into retreat. Each movement reflected human ingenuity, the ability to think ahead, and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Lyra's energy amplified these effects, making the defenses stronger, more unpredictable, and impossible to counter with conventional tactics. As the last of the pursuers fled, Ethan turned to Lyra. "See, humans survive, adapt, and protect. That's what we do. And you're extraordinary, but together we're unstoppable." Lyra's glow softened, her eyes reflecting gratitude, trust, and growing confidence. She had been alone for so long, but humans had shown her a new way of existing. Not just surviving, but thriving, facing challenges with courage, and protecting those who could not protect themselves. Ethan leaned back, allowing himself a rare moment of relief. The station was quiet, their immediate danger gone, and for the first time in a long while they could rest. But he also knew this was only a temporary reprieve. The galaxy would continue to challenge them. Powerful factions would pursue them. But humans had always risen to challenges greater than themselves. And with Lyra, their potential was limitless. The bond between human and alien was no longer fragile. It was forged in courage, trust, and shared survival. And in the vast, indifferent galaxy, that bond was the most powerful force either of them had ever known. Humans, Ethan realized, had always been underestimated. But when they acted with courage, intelligence, and empathy, there was no obstacle they could not overcome. And together with Lyra, they would face the galaxy not as prey, but as a force to be reckoned with.